box, but when the sermon went on a little longer, he thought he'd make it 5, and so on, until by the time the plate came round, he wanted to take money out. So I think it's very impressive indeed for 3 men with these particular qualifications to be not only so articulate, but also so brief. We wanted to keep them brief because we wanted to give you a chance to ask them questions and to give them a chance to talk with one another rather than just at us. So I'm going to offer you the opportunity to ask and offer them the opportunity to talk to one another. Does anybody want to kick off? Very good.
Thanks, Nick. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your comments. I guess you're all aware of the social cohesion report.
This one.
That I'm working at?
No. Yep.
Thanks. For the last few years, each year, a social cohesion report has been put out, undertaken by Andrew Marcus from Monash University. One of the more concerning findings of the most recent one is that some 25% of Australians fear Muslims. And as a member of the Victorian Multicultural Commission, we find that particularly disturbing. It's something that we'd like to find ways to address and overcome, because whatever issues may exist beyond Australia's boundaries, they certainly shouldn't be replicated here in Australia. So while we have the opportunity to do it together, I'd be grateful for any suggestion or thoughts you might have as to how that issue might be addressed.
Hello?
I'll start as an educator, and that's one of the reasons why I joined education from the parish, went into education, because I am so interested in that, and I'm deeply concerned about those findings as well. And I see it in some of my students as well. There is a real sense of ignorance in society, so that's one thing, Ramy. But there's also a great thing to be celebrated in Australia. I think we need to mention that as well. Melbourne was chosen for the Parliament of World Religions for a reason, because it is multicultural, because there are many grassroots things happening like this one, and many, many others, including probably all of you, are involved in all sorts of things. And I absolutely love coming to Melbourne, because I live on the peninsula, and see all the very many cultures living in peace together. So let's say that as well. Let's celebrate that Australia, in my view, and I come from Europe where I've lived most of my life, is the most successful multicultural country in the world that I know of. Perhaps India has got some also things to teach us as well in that case. But I think in terms of what we do with the 25% that claim that they don't like Muslims, it's all about education. I know, as I've said before, but it's about bringing kids together. And there are some programs like the Building Bridges program, where kids from different schools, Muslim, Christian, Jews, and etc., come together and they share their stories, and they don't necessarily speak about religion, but they speak about their lives, and they share their music, and it's been shown, proven now. Tim McGowan's writing a PhD about it as we speak, to actually show the findings that it's been incredibly successful of turning people's minds around. Apart from that, it's about speaking in classrooms, it's about education. So I'll flag the flag for multi-faith education from the RENA group that I'm involved in, trying to get multi-faith education as part of the national curriculum. Please, if you're interested in that, come with me on that journey and many others, and really speak up and tell the government in all different, in local MPs all the way up to Canberra. That's what we've done, and now it's actually happening. We have already got the first paper written, so we hope that every single student in Australia will have at least some knowledge of the basics of Islam, and therefore also the human faces. But it's not just enough with a curriculum, it's about bringing the human faces together. So I'll end there. Perhaps one of the two other panelists will like to say something about this.
Okay, so let me talk about what's happening now and what further could happen. I'm currently the Vice President of the Islamic Council of Victoria, which is the big representative body for Muslims here. Late last year, the board I was involved in with our previous president, Werdiger, we reached out. I think I spot John at the back there. We reached out to John and his board at the JCCB. And I think, that was the start of, hopefully a very positive relationship. I hope to personally continue that over time. Clearly, as Muslims, we're involved in a number of interfaith bodies, such as the JCMA, the Jewish Christian Muslim Association, as well as, we've had a very good relationship with ADC and Deborah for some time. So I think, that work goes on and it continues. But I think in terms of other things that I'd like to see happen and in terms of building on what we're already doing, I think the school curriculum is an important part. I know the Jewish community for some time have had the Jewish Museum here in Melbourne, and the Islamic community is working on a similar project which should hopefully be up and running in Thornbury within sort of 12 to 18 months. So I think that will help educate people. I know that the contributions of both the Jewish faith and the Muslim faith to Australian society are huge, but are largely unknown. And I would love to see that in the school curriculum when kids get taught about the history of Australia and its formation and its progression or evolution. I would love to see that so that we remove some of those stereotypes of not just our faith but others. And lastly, sort of to come back to official academic reports and often government funding is tied to that. For some time, speaking for my faith, a lot of members of the Muslim community are often migrant backgrounds, and in some cases newly arrived migrants. And there seems to be a lot of money and effort by the government plowed into this wonderful word called integration, integrating Muslims into Australian society. And what I feel at this point, we're coming into an interesting period where I think, with increased anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, if I can use those terms, I think it's time that the government seriously looks at reaching out to, if I can use the word, the redneck population of Australia, and start to work with them to integrate them into society, quite frankly. So that's my personal thoughts.
I can't resist putting in a plug here. We will, on the 9th of May at St Kilda Town Hall, have Rabbi Michael Melchior speaking about anti-Semitism and Islamophobia in Europe. It's very relevant to what we've just been discussing. He's an extraordinary international interfaith figure. You'll be hearing more about that event, but you should put it in your diaries now. Jeremy?
I probably don't need the microphone. Thank you to all of our speakers. It was very heartening to hear all of you talk about peace and justice and the sorts of things that are the bedrock of the various faiths. And yet, when we look around at the damage being done by organized religion, by extremists of various faiths, and given our expanded knowledge of the world and the universe that's advanced so far from where those faiths began, isn't it almost time to look at organized religion and say, really, we should just scrap it and let people carry on their own personal spiritualities? Now, I know you can answer that in 5 minutes, of course, but really, isn't it time to just scrap it and start from scratch?
Where would I work? I need a job.
I all need jobs. Avrohom. You take.
Is there a place for organized religion in a modern world? Is that the question? I think partially yes. And what I mean by the partial part of the answer is that perhaps organized religion needs to evolve. There's a great advantage of having a religion that's organized, and that it's stable and it's predictable. It's kind of like me trying to get my children to brush their teeth regularly. I don't want it to be a philosophical debate every time they brush their teeth. I want it to be something that they do almost without thinking, because that structure, you wake up, it's part of your routine in the morning, you go to sleep at night, it's part of your bedtime routine. And I think that structure kind of assists in making sure that the task gets done. And so having organized religion, having a structure, having a community is very inspiring, and it creates stability. On the other hand, I think that we live in a world, and this is a wonderful development, where especially younger people want to put their own personality, they want to inject their own personality into organized religion. I think that's a very wonderful and positive development, in that I think we're going to get a lot of creative solutions to some of the problems. You know, when one thinks of philanthropy, for example, and the modern super philanthropists, the Bill Gates of the world today, who are taking the same genius, the same out-of-the-square thinking that they built their incredible companies with, and they're applying that to some of the great problems that affect humans everywhere. And I think so having a combination of both of those is a wonderful development in organized religion. So I'm not entirely arguing with the point that you're making, but I think that there is a place for the formality, for the rules, for the ritual, and I think that there's a place to inject it with some innovative and exciting new ways of looking at things.
Thank you, Rabbi. Great question. Thank you for that question. It's controversial for sure, that's why we didn't want to answer, because we don't want to give up our own livelihood like the Rabbi said. Because obviously we think there's some value in it, and I probably think you do too, otherwise we probably wouldn't be here. Who's going to carry the story if we don't have a religion? Who's going to carry the different stories of the Islamic stories, the Jewish stories, the Christian stories, and so forth in other religions? Like, I wouldn't want that burden on my shoulders. I'm frail, and I'm going to die within the next 50 years. And who's going to be the container of the story? That's what we speak about in Christianity. That the church, for example, for all its faults, and believe me, we know we have got many, and we repent for them. What would we do without the church? They wouldn't have kept the story of Jesus. We wouldn't have known the wonderful words of peace and all the different things that we learned from Christianity if it hadn't been for a structure that had kept it alive. But with structures, Max Weber used to say, there is a watering down of the original message. It happens sociologically. That's just what happens. There's a leader who has a great message, and then it's watered down as soon as it gets into an institution. But without the institution, it cannot stay alive. And so we need to know the compromise. That's why we in Christianity have monastic orders to keep us on fire. People on the edges who will tell us the real message of the gospel from Christian speaking. Now, I want to say also, coming from that question, is that yes, there are lots of problems with religions, and young people today are already turning it away. So a lot of people are already scrapping religion. But they're still finding value in some of the words of the religious wisdoms. And I don't really see a future without the wisdom paths. I think that's very essential to value the wisdom path and to respect it. And that's been a real tragedy in our society, which is throwing away the wisdom of the elders. So I hope that we will survive. And on the last point, I do think, and I spoke in another setting with Jewish friends here on the Charter for Compassion that Karen Armstrong has authored with many other religious leaders, where she says any interpretation of scripture that is exclusive and can lead potentially to violence is illegitimate today. I think that's wonderful words. And I speak up in my own Anglican church, I can promise you that. We're 70 million people in the world, we're not many. And I only have a tiny bit of influence here in Australia, in Melbourne. But I hope many more will do so in Catholicism. Any interpretation that is leading to exclusive notions that we are the only ones, that we are the only saved ones, the world will only be good if it's us, or that other people are not right, if they are peace-loving people, we need to get rid of that. And if that means scrapping some parts of organized religions, bring it on.